In my past life, my sister and I married into the Johnson family on the same day. She despised the eldest son, Ethan, calling him gloomy and paranoid, so she quickly chose the second son, Lucas, known for his cold demeanor and deep devotion to Buddhism. But despite his quiet reputation, she couldn't endure the loneliness of their marriage. She ended up having an affair, and when Lucas found out, he didn't scream or rage. Instead, he bound her wrists with Buddhist prayer beads and handed her over to the city's wealthiest elites, to be humiliated, passed around and broken. Meanwhile, I married Ethan, the so-called hopeless romantic. In truth, he was anything but. But I managed all his assets, kept the empire running, and in return I lived a life of comfort and quiet power. He treated me well, not out of love but out of fear. I held the financial leash, and he knew one wrong move, and I could destroy him. In a fit of jealousy and rage, my sister Emily pushed me off a high-rise building. I fell, my body shattered on impact, and I died. But when I opened my eyes again, we were both back, returned to the day of our engagement. This time, Emily's face twisted with malice as she suddenly shoved me forward, straight into Lucas's arms. "Lucas has admired you for a long time," she declared, her voice sweet but laced with venom. "He won't marry anyone but you. Go on, sister, don't be shy. Call him husband already." I barely held back a sneer as I watched her throw herself into Ethan's embrace with feigned shyness. "My dear sister," I thought, "let me take a wild guess. How long do you really think you'll last in the hands of that twisted pervert who enjoys playing with men dressed as women?" At the Johnson family's engagement banquet, just moments ago, Emily had been telling our parents she would only marry Lucas. And now, in the next breath, she was forcing me into his arms. Her flawless face, once so delicate, now carried a depth of malice and madness far beyond her years. "Lucas has already fallen for you," she insisted. "He won't marry anyone else. Don't be shy, sister. Hurry and greet him. Call him husband already." Before I could react, she shoved me hard. I stumbled forward, instinctively reaching for the table beside me, but before I could grab it, a pair of strong hands caught me. A faint scent of sandalwood surrounded me. It was Lucas. He was a true gentleman, raised in temples, devoted to scripture, always composed. He studied me for a brief moment, then let go gently. "Miss Sophia, be careful," he said, his voice deep and unreadable, as expected from a man who had spent his life in spiritual retreats. He carried himself with quiet detachment, as if untouched by worldly desires. If I hadn't known what he was truly capable of, how in my past life he'd bound Emily in prayer beads for 3 days before casting her into the hands of rich playboys, I might have believed in his saintly image. I lowered my gaze, feigning shyness, and murmured softly, "Thank you." Men like him care deeply about appearances, especially powerful men. If I showed even the slightest discomfort or resistance, he might grow wary, and that would only make things harder later. Emily had played her move perfectly, forcing me into this marriage. But when I looked up, I caught the flash of triumph in her eyes. So she had been reborn too. And she had returned to this exact moment. But even if she hadn't pushed me toward Lucas, I would have chosen him myself. After all, Lucas was indifferent to women, uninterested in love, but his wealth was limitless, and he gave his wife complete freedom, so long as she never crossed his bottom line. Ethan, on the other hand, was the opposite. Not only was he depraved and perverse, but he had a disturbing fetish for men dressed as women. The people around him weren't just friends, they were well-dressed beasts in disguise. The only reason he treated me well in my past life was because I controlled the company's financial lifeline. I held the power to ruin him at any moment, so he played the part of the devoted husband, under my watchful eye. If Lucas was a ruthless wolf, Ethan was a venomous snake, cunning, cruel, and impossible to trust. Congratulations, dear sister. You've chosen the worst possible path for yourself. The guests around us were already looking at Emily differently, but she quickly regained her composure, flashing a soft, gentle smile. "My little sister has always been timid," she said sweetly. I've taken care of her since we were children. I know how shy she is, so I figured I'd help her out. She turned to me, her expression dripping with false sincerity. Sophia, your dream has finally come true. Make sure to cherish your new husband. Lucas is such a refined and gentle man, she emphasized, each word laced with hidden mockery. She was absolutely convinced I would suffer under his cold, distant hands. But to Ethan, this entire scene only made Emily seem even more considerate and well-mannered. He was notorious for his debauchery. His parents had long given up on disciplining him. Finding a wife who was so selflessly kind and willing to sacrifice for her sister. That was exactly what he wanted. His lips curled into a dazzling smile. My, what a thoughtful sister you are. Emily casually tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and smiled. Seductive, effortless. Every movement dripped with charm. Ethan was completely mesmerized. Without hesitation, he reached out and invited her to the first dance of the evening. Emily had never liked studying or thinking deeply. Her greatest joys in life were dressing up, dancing, and being the center of attention. And just like that, she walked straight into his trap. As the dance ended, thunderous applause filled the hall. That night, Emily was the star. She had completely ensnared Ethan. Any woman with real experience knew that men had to be strung along for a while. Only then would they truly cherish what they had. But Emily was in too much of a hurry, terrified that I might steal him from her. That very night, she followed Ethan straight to a hotel. She couldn't wait. The next day, Emily called me on video, eager to flaunt her victory. She was draped in a silk camisole, her neck adorned with a massive sapphire necklace. Love bites covered her skin. Smug, she said, "Sophia, isn't this necklace beautiful? It's a top-tier piece from the auction, worth over 30 million. Ethan was so gentle with me last night. A real man should be generous and considerate, just like him. Of course, you're marrying into the Johnson family too," she continued. "But tradition dictates that the eldest son inherits everything. I will be Mrs. Johnson, the future head of Fortune Group. You'll only receive some yearly dividends from us. You were born 3 minutes after me," she added. "That's why I'll always be above you. Now even in marriage I've won again. Sometimes you just have to accept fate." I let out a soft laugh. "Emily, don't you think you're celebrating a bit too soon? Everyone knows Ethan has more lovers than he can count. The moment you marry him, you'll be busy dealing with mistresses. Number 3, 4, and 5 will be giving you plenty of headaches." She lifted her chin confidently. "That was in the past. Last night, he swore to me I'd be his only woman. He even made a vow, if he ever cheated, he'd never be able to get it up again." She scoffed, as if I'd dared to question her. "He also said that before marriage, it's normal for men to have their fun. A guy as handsome and rich as him. Of course women throw themselves at him. But from now on he's mine. And soon he'll be completely obsessed with me." I couldn't hold back my laughter. If men's promises were worth believing, pigs would be climbing trees by now. And we're talking about Ethan, a man who grew up drowning in debauchery. Every inch of him is rotten to the core. With a smirk I taunted, "You sound so sure of yourself." Emily's smile widened with pride. "Of course. There's never been a man I couldn't get. He's already proposed to me. The wedding is next month. No budget limit. Everything will be exactly as I want. Sophia, if you're regretting anything now, it's too late. Ethan is your brother-in-law. You better stay away from him. If I ever catch you trying to seduce him, I'll break your legs." Her threat was serious, and I didn't doubt for a second that she meant it. After all, in my past life she had pushed me off a building, left me a shattered corpse. Naturally, I wouldn't tell her about Ethan's real issues. That man had played around so much he'd caught diseases. Not only was he depraved in his tastes, but sometimes he even went after animals. Just thinking about it made me sick. Meanwhile, Lucas and I were officially engaged. Though his cold, detached nature remained unchanged, he never appeared in person. Instead, he sent me millions worth of exquisite jewelry. He was either meditating at a temple, discussing scriptures with monks, or flying abroad to seek wisdom from renowned spiritual masters. Rich, absent, uninvolved. And my life, peaceful, luxurious, with complete freedom. Emily, on the other hand, flooded her social media with posts flaunting her love life, endless pictures of kisses, hugs, and post-bedtime glow. Not one to back down, I countered by showcasing my collection of luxury jewelry, designer bags, and exclusive auction purchases. My extravagant spending even became a trending topic online. The comment section overflowed with praise, calling me a stunning, powerful woman with both wealth and beauty. Even my likes far outnumbered Emily's. After all, everyone in our circle knew exactly what kind of man Ethan was. Frustrated, Emily left a comment on one of my posts. * Material wealth is meaningless. The greatest gift in life is love. *. I replied instantly. * Love is expressed through gifts. My dear husband just gave me something even more valuable. Isn't that what love is all about? If you don't have it, it must mean you don't want it, right? *. That was the last straw. Furious, Emily called me on video, screaming insults. I hung up immediately. Let her stew in her own rage. Emily and Ethan's wedding was a grand spectacle. They bought an entire private island, a fleet of luxury yachts, and even a private jet for the occasion. The guest list was filled with high-profile figures, people who frequently appeared on television. During the reception, Emily clung to Ethan's arm, making rounds to toast the female guests, brimming with pride. Ethan played along, keeping his arm protectively around her waist, occasionally shielding her from drinks, pinching her cheek affectionately. It all looked so sweet. Except, of course, it was nothing more than muscle memory for him. He'd spent his entire life surrounded by women. Emily, meanwhile, was so blinded by love that she failed to notice Ethan exchanging flirtatious glances with women at 5 different tables. These weren't just random guests, employees, or family members. They were his exes, his current lovers. Every single one had attended his bachelor party the night before. Some of them were even male models. The host of the wedding ceremony had been there too. In my past life, I had gotten my hands on videos of their debauchery, used them as leverage to keep Ethan far away from me. But clearly, Emily was still blissfully ignorant. She was so paranoid about anything happening between Ethan and me that she only dared to show off when he was in the bathroom. Holding up her hand, she flaunted a massive 16-carat pink diamond ring. "Sophia," she said, grinning, "isn't my ring beautiful? It's worth over 60 million. One of a kind. Truly priceless. And not to be rude," I said with a soft smile, "but the little trinkets you love to show off? They're nothing compared to this. Honestly, they're just garbage to me." Emily's face twisted slightly, but I calmly took another bite of my cake, savoring the sweetness. Then, without looking up, I added, "Well, at least my little trinkets actually belong to me. But tell me, Emily, does that jewelry really belong to you?" Her expression darkened instantly. Everyone knew Ethan was rich, but not that rich. The truth was, those dazzling pieces weren't his to give. They belonged to the Johnson family's private collection, locked away in a vault. He had to request permission just to wear them, and return them afterward like borrowed museum artifacts. Emily stiffened. "Of course it's mine. What, do you think it belongs to you instead?" She glanced around the grand ballroom, gesturing at the sea of high-profile guests. "Look at all these people, celebrities, CEOs, influencers, all here to celebrate our wedding. When you and Lucas get married, it won't be nearly this lively. And let me warn you, stay away from my husband." I casually tossed my finished plate into the trash and gave her a serene smile. "Relax. I have no interest in garbage." But she wasn't entirely wrong. My wedding to Lucas wasn't just less extravagant, it was the complete opposite of a spectacle. No guest list, no fanfare, no media. We simply picked an auspicious date, signed the marriage certificate, and that was it. Right after, he took me to a luxury real estate office and handed over the deed to an entire villa estate worth billions, registered solely under my name. His reasoning: "You're so well behaved. You deserve a reward." The generosity was staggering. Even though I now technically controlled the financial assets of Fortune Group, I wouldn't have dared to spend that boldly. Then came his signature domineering CEO speech. "I'm busy. I don't have time to entertain you. Want something? Don't bother me unless it's important. If I need you, I'll come to you. Don't argue with my parents in front of me. And don't get involved with other men." And with that he left. It was every woman's dream. Filthy rich, completely absent, and granting absolute freedom. I had finally hit the jackpot. But I hadn't come back from the dead just to be a trophy wife. Wealth meant nothing without power. And in this life I had tasted what true freedom felt like. Freedom that came not just from money but from influence. I wasn't settling. I had to reach even greater heights. So I started building my own empire. First, I made a fortune in the stock market, using my knowledge of the future to make moves that were practically guaranteed wins. Then I expanded aggressively, buying up land at auctions, collecting rare paintings and jewelry, and eventually investing in influencer incubators and media networks. Every decision was calculated, every risk minimized by foresight. In no time I was making waves. 10 days after our quiet wedding, Lucas unexpectedly returned and invited me to dinner. In my past life, he had disappeared the very night of Emily's wedding, retreating to a monastery for 3 months, only returning for his grandfather's birthday. But this time he was different. Unusually courteous. He even personally brewed me tea. "Sophia," he said, his voice calm and unreadable, "in just 10 days of marriage, you've spent over 100 million. I wasn't fazed. I took the teacup and sipped slowly. As expected of the Johnson family, even your tea is top tier and priceless. Smiling, I added, "Well, black cards have a daily spending limit of 10 million. Otherwise, I would have spent even more." A faint smirk tugged at his lips. "Aren't you afraid I'll call you a spendthrift?" I set the cup down and gave him an easy smile. "Only useless men complain about women spending money. But you, Lucas, you're no ordinary man. If I wanted the stars in the sky, you'd bring them down for me without hesitation. A woman should marry a true man like you. Besides, all the money I've spent, it's an investment. Every cent will generate returns. And since we're married, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine." No man could resist that kind of flattery. Sure enough, a flicker of amusement danced in his eyes. Seeing my cup was empty, he poured me more tea, slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. "You really are different from other women," he said. "Most are satisfied with small luxuries. But you're investing in real estate, antiques, stocks, making waves in the market. Marrying me must feel like settling." This was his way of acknowledging my financial acumen. Chuckled. "Not at all. It's just that you have the resources. Without them, I wouldn't be able to make such large-scale investments in such a short time." There was truth in that. Yes, I had been bold, but only because Lucas had enough wealth to support it. And while the profits I made were legally considered marital assets, split equally between us, the reputation I was building in the business world was entirely my own. Once I established my empire, it would belong to me alone. No matter how much gold Lucas had, no matter how gilded his name, people would still whisper behind his back that he was living off his wife's success. Lucas didn't beat around the bush. "You can invest and start your own business however you like. If you need resources, connections, or funding, just ask." Then he paused. "But today, I came to see you because a friend of mine is interested in a piece of land you own in the southern suburbs. He wants to build a shopping mall there. Name your price." The southern suburbs were in the middle of a massive development push. Hospitals, schools, office buildings were all relocating there. A shopping mall in that area would be a guaranteed gold mine. I had originally planned to develop it myself. But later I decided against it. Brick-and-mortar retail was on the decline. In the coming years, e-commerce would dominate. It wasn't worth locking up capital in a dying industry. I smiled and nodded graciously. We're family, aren't we? Your friend is my friend. Why talk about money? I'll have the land title sent over first thing tomorrow. Lucas, the ever-detached Buddhist, actually froze, teacup halfway to his lips. That land was the very one I had purchased on our wedding day, after selling off the billion-dollar estate he had gifted me and pouring all my stock market earnings into it. If I sold it now, I'd make at least 4 times my original investment. And here I was handing it over, for free. Of course, I wasn't actually that generous. I was using the classic strategy of retreating to advance. By not naming a price, I forced them into a corner. The only way they could compensate me was by offering the highest possible market rate. If they lowballed me, it would make them look petty, especially after I'd generously given it away. Lucas had seen all kinds of women in his life. But a woman who was both greedy and magnanimous at the same time. That was a first. He studied me for a long moment. Then finally, "What's your angle?" I kept a straight face and without hesitation spewed pure nonsense. "Isn't it obvious? It's because I like you." 3 sentences, each one subtly cornering him. For the first time, his lips curved into a smile, different from his usual polite smirk. There was something almost boyish about it. He raised an eyebrow. "Amuse me. You expect me to believe that?" Clearly he didn't. After all, he was smart enough to see through Emily's nonsense at the engagement banquet. But this time I wasn't lying. I explained. "You've met my parents. You know how they are. Opportunistic, self-serving. Even if I hadn't married you, they would have sold me off to someone else for power and resources. You're objectively the best possible option I had. You prefer a quiet, detached lifestyle. I prefer to focus on business and making money. Our partnership. A win-win." Lucas chuckled, his clear eyes glinting with interest. For his entire life, he had been forced to stay in the background, told to be humble, never to overshadow his older brother. But I was different, bold, ambitious, unapologetically assertive. I was everything he had never dared to be. Before long, he started taking me to gatherings with his inner circle. Nothing like Ethan's so-called elite social scene, filled with spoiled trust fund brats indulging in vice. No, Lucas's circle consisted of true power players, titans of industry, men whose time was so valuable that booking a dinner with them required months of advance planning. With my advantage of knowing the future, I quickly impressed them. Before long, I wasn't just discussing business deals. I was being invited to their private gatherings for tea. Powerful men admired strength in women just as much as women admired it in men. And Lucas, his attitude toward me changed drastically. He started personally pouring my tea, preparing my favorite snacks, and even handling negotiations for the prime office space I had my eye on. He took it upon himself to help me recruit top talent from the industry. His attentiveness was meticulous. On the grand opening day of my influencer incubator, Emily finally managed to win favor with Mrs. Johnson, Ethan's mother. As a reward, she was handed control over Fortune Group's hotel and jewelry business. Overnight, she was all over the news, hailed as the ideal wealthy wife. Graceful, capable, ambitious. But as both daughters-in-law of the Johnson family, things had to be fair. So I was also assigned a business to manage. The worst one. The fashion division. How bad was it? Since its launch, it had ranked dead last in profitability. No matter how much money they poured in, top designers, international campaigns, celebrity endorsements, nothing worked. Over the past 5 years, they'd gone through at least 50 different creative directors, both domestic and international. Not a single success. The industry openly mocked it as the biggest failure in Fortune Group's history. Clearly, this was meant to humiliate me. Lucas frowned slightly, displeased. "Tourism is booming right now. I'll talk to my parents and get you reassigned." I waved him off confidently. I love turning the tide when the odds are against me. Just give me a month. Wait and see. His lips curved slightly, admiration flickering in his gaze. That confident. I nodded firmly. Of course. There are some industries I wouldn't bet on. But reviving Fortune Group's fashion brand. That's something I've already done once before. It was precisely this accomplishment in my past life that had won over my highly critical in-laws, making them trust my judgment completely. But this time I wasn't stopping at domestic success. I came to push the brand into the global top 50 luxury labels. To reach even greater heights. Lucas verbally expressed his trust in me, but deep down he was still worried that I might run the company's fashion division into the ground. For the first time he stopped visiting temples, stopped discussing philosophy with monks. Instead he began following me everywhere, worried someone at the company would try to sabotage me, or that I wouldn't be able to navigate the internal politics. But the moment I stepped into the company with him, he quickly realized I wasn't the type to be bullied. Without hesitation, I fired 2/3 of the old employees, most of whom were just there for an easy paycheck, relying on connections rather than competence. They had driven away genuinely talented newcomers, stifling any chance of progress. When they tried to appeal to higher management, Lucas personally shut them down. By the afternoon, they had all quietly submitted their resignation letters. Next, I went to the country's top art schools, asking professors to recommend their best students. Those who performed well were offered direct employment. Every week I held theme-based design competitions. The first prize at $300,000, the second at $200,000, the third at $100,000. Winners would be immediately hired as full-time designers. The competitions became a sensation. Designers from all over the country flocked to participate. Within weeks, our brand was trending. Not just for the extravagant prizes, but for the bold, fresh designs that poured in from young, undiscovered talent. I didn't just revive the fashion division. I reinvented it. We launched a capsule collection that sold out in 7 minutes. Then another. And another. The media, once dismissive, now called it a cultural reset. International fashion houses took notice. Invitations to Paris, Milan, and New York fashion weeks arrived. Something Fortune Group's brand had never achieved in decades. And me. I stood front row, not as a silent wife, but as the creative force behind the revival. My name began to eclipse the brand itself. Sophia Johnson became synonymous with innovation, power, and quiet revolution. Back at the mansion, Emily's triumph had already started to crack. Ethan, once so affectionate in public, began disappearing for days. His excuses, business trips. But the rumors were louder now. Videos leaked online, blurry but damning, showing him in compromising situations with men in silk gowns, masked parties in private villas, even whispers of animal cruelty. The press hesitated at first, but when a former staff member came forward with evidence, the scandal exploded. Emily was humiliated. She screamed, she cried, she threatened to leave, but the Johnson family wouldn't allow it. Their reputation was already tarnished. She was trapped, a gilded prisoner in a marriage that had turned to ash. One evening she showed up at my door, her designer dress wrinkled, mascara smudged, her hands trembling. "You knew," she whispered, voice breaking. "You knew this would happen." I didn't deny it. I simply handed her a cup of tea, Lucas's favorite blend, the one steeped in sandalwood and silence. "I told you," I said gently. "Pigs don't climb trees. And men like Ethan don't change." She stared at me, eyes wide with realization. "You didn't just survive this life, you won." I smiled, not with pride but with peace. "No, Emily. I didn't win. I rewrote the game." A week later the news broke. Fortune Group's fashion division had been acquired by a global luxury conglomerate for a record-breaking sum. My share. Billions. More than enough to buy my freedom, even from the Johnson name. At the signing ceremony, Lucas stood beside me, silent as ever. But this time he didn't leave immediately. Instead he turned to me and said, so quietly only I could hear, "You were right. I thought I was giving you a life of quiet luxury. But you built a kingdom instead. I looked up at him, then at the skyline beyond, the city that once tried to bury me, now reflecting my name in lights. And in that moment I realized something profound. Rebirth wasn't about revenge. It was about becoming the woman I was always meant to be. Unseen in life, unforgettable in death, and utterly unstoppable in the second chance I was given. The end.